Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. We are so excited here at the PTAC. My name is Jasmine McKinney. I am the Program Director here at the Region 6 Procurement Technical Assistance Center. And I am partnered today with my friend Delana Spates-Allen from the Region 5 PTAC up in Saginaw. And we are so excited to have Anna Urman here to present to us on Beta.Sam.Gov, some market research tips and tricks that she's learned as we have this new system that we're all trying to navigate. Just for a little awareness for everyone, the PTAC, it provides procurement advice and counseling to companies interested in doing business with local, state, and federal governments. Our program is funded by the Defense Logistics Agency and the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. And so we're very thankful for their continued generous support to make sure that we're able to provide our services at no cost to our clients. Today, we are joined by Anna Urman, who is the Senior Procurement Analyst at the Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization at the U.S. Department of State. Anna is very familiar with the PTAC program. Prior to joining the Department of State, she was the PTAC program manager for the state of Virginia. So we are very happy to have Anna on. And without further ado, I'm going to let Anna take it away. If you have any questions as we go along, please put them in the chat and we will try and field them as we go along and also save some for the end. So don't be shy. All right, Anna.
Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this morning. So the purpose of today's webinar is to make Beta.Sam, frankly, a little bit less scary. So let me set some ground rules before we get started with the substance of the webinar. First, if you have any question at all, please share it in the chat. Somebody else might be thinking the same thing. I've been doing government contracts for 15 years, and my husband also does government contracts, so I speak this language at home. I understand that everybody does, so I have been known to say sentences comprised entirely of acronyms, and I don't mean to scare anybody away. So please, if you're unsure, just type it in. You may get an answer in the chat. We may address it as they go along, or at the end. The purpose is to demystify things, not make them even more scary and unapproachable. Also, I love teaching, and I like teaching in person, and I miss it, and we don't have the same opportunity right now for interaction. So there may be times where I will ask a question for the audience. Now, unlike in a real class, I can't stare down at people and make them answer. So audience participation is greatly appreciated, makes me know that folks are awake and interested or not. It helps the class become more real and more actionable as well if I'm able to tie in something that I'm teaching in theory to some real life situation. So let's try with the first audience participation question. 1 or 2 words. What kind of business do you have? What industry do you represent? What work do you do? Please don't say consulting. Just to get a sense of what who is represented in the room. So feel free to type that in.
A lighting distributor.
Perfect. Thank you. If you want to unmute yourself and say it, or if you want to type it in the chat, we'll do it either way right now. I'll give it a second.
My name is Corey, and I am a tactical medical instructor, and I also provide medical supplies and personnel for disaster relief and right now the COVID vaccines.
Perfect. Thank you.
It's Sharon Fleming, and we are a third-party packaging supplier and also supply packaging material.
Great. In the chat, I see R&D, autonomous vehicles, medical equipment, cybersecurity. Fantastic. Lots of products and services are presented. Great. Okay. I'm going to move on unless there's additional ones for a second. Okay, we've got Pamela with the PTAC. Fantastic. Welcome. love my PTAC. All right, I'm going to share my presentation screen. If you want to keep typing in, please do. I will, since I'm sharing my screen, I will be looking at my chat occasionally. Otherwise, I get too easily distracted. Thank you, Jasmine, for introducing me. I won't go into my personal history. The best way to reach me afterwards is by email. My email address is urman@state.gov. I'm also, I try to be active on LinkedIn and to stay away from starting trouble, but there's some good government contracting conversations to be had on that platform, and lots of government contracting industry as well as federal folks, so may be useful to you. Next question, as we get started here, how familiar are you with Beta.Sam? And let's do a scale of 1, 2, or 3. 1 is a novice, 2 is tried and frustrated, and 3 is still pretty comfortable and are looking for some advanced tips. And feel free to type that in, type in that number as you go along. Okay, lots of frustrated. All right, 2.5, excellent. All right, so let me lay the background a little bit. Why is Beta.Sam important, especially the market research on the awards, and it is because we are trying to get a holistic picture of your federal customer. I can move my slides up. All right. Because I've been teaching for a while and meeting with businesses, part of my current job at the OSDBU is talk to small businesses. I meet with about 4 companies every week, give or take. And sometimes I have really good anecdotes. And I do not mean to pick on any companies, maybe except for IT companies. I love picking on them. I've been working with them the longest, even going back to my industry days. But the purpose is to have kind of apocryphal, useful information that encapsulates the point, and not so much to be mean to any particular company. So I don't intend to do that. But hopefully there are some life lessons that you can take away as well. So why are we doing market research? Think of Beta.Sam and the other tools that I'm sure the PTAC is teaching you as a way to get a holistic understanding of the market. Yes, we will absolutely be talking about federal agencies. In fact, this webinar and the resources here are put forth by the federal government to report on federal action. But as part of that analysis, as part of that research, what you're also understanding is your competitive landscape. Not only what is a particular agency buying and how much they're spending, but who are they buying it from? What contracting vehicles are they using, and what vendors are present on those vehicles? Is there anything particularly surprising about that market, good or bad? And as you are looking at your customers, as you're looking at your competitors, are you identifying any potential opportunities where you could team, where you could partner, where you could identify additional targets of opportunity based on your subject matter expertise, your experience, and your relationships, current or the ones that you're going to build based on this information? What exactly are we looking for? What are the data points that will help us quantify and then qualify what we'll find? I'm listing just some common ones that have helped me in my government market analysis research career. There may be some things that are particular to your industry or particular to the products or services that you're providing that are different in addition to this. For example, if you are selling products, then maybe the place of manufacture would be useful. If you're in construction, what is it called? It used to be the Davis-Bacon Act, but the legislative requirements relating to particular contract types that you're part of would be useful. with customers, you may want to know the location. You may want to know the vendor's location as well as the places of performance. You may want to know just a different landscape. For example, how many agencies is a particular company selling to? Are they pretty broad in the market, or do they specialize in just one agency or department, and they're not really a threat in all the other places? Or maybe there's an opportunity for them to bring me into their customer, and then I could help them with another different federal agency. So the list that we're looking at right here is not all encompassing. It is a starting place. Think about it. What data points would be useful to you? And as you look at the information that's available, you may start to pick up on trends. You may start to pick up on some additional bits of information or bits of research that would be useful for you in your business development and in your federal sales. I think I've talked through the reasons why, but just to give you an idea of not only what information you're looking for, but how you're going to use what you find through market research. One is, so Neil in the chat is adding what a competition type, any set asides, absolutely. Those are valid data points that you want to focus on. We may, if we have time, address afterwards why focusing on socioeconomic categories to the exclusion of everything else may be setting up a myopic market view for you, but absolutely that's a useful bit of information to understand what socioeconomic categories are being used or are not being used by your target agencies. And there are a couple of ways we could get to that information easily. Thank you. So why are we looking for this information? Being in this webinar, we may all be taking it for granted, but I don't want to leave any kind of big elephants in the room. So determine if federal is the market. Is the federal government or any federal agencies buying what it is that you sell at the prices that you're willing to sell it for in a way that you're willing to sell it to them or not? In which case you find a different market and don't waste any resources on something that does not fit. You want to look at your competitors and figure out how you're better. It is a competition. There is probably not a single NAICS code or PSC code that does not have competition, but there may be some pockets where you are better suited to have a differentiator than others, where you are a stronger competitor than other markets, and figuring out what those are. And where necessary, what are the partners that you could bring in, who could you team with that could help you build out that bigger, better, more competitive solution. There are also resources, and we probably won't have time to go into it today, but there are, in addition to the bulk or the contract price totals that you'll see today, there are other resources that could help you identify some labor rates. GSA has a couple of resources on that. Ultimately, what we're doing is helping you find federal contracts. And hopefully the information provided here will move you a step or two or 10 closer to understanding your customer and winning some federal work. And then if you do, please tell your PTAC, because they love to know how well you're doing, and they could help you further with that as well. So what I'll be doing probably for the rest of this webinar is switching between my slides and the live demo. In fact, I will probably stay more on the live demo web page, and the slides will be a reference and will be a takeaway for you later, something to refer to. If you don't remember how to get to a particular point, I tried to take some good screenshots that you could go back to later and help jog your memory of what it is that we're doing. So I was putting some finishing touches on my slides yesterday, and I noticed that on Monday, I don't go into Beta.Sam today, surprise to anybody, but on Monday, Beta.Sam changed their look. So if you were somewhat familiar as to what Beta.Sam had looked like for the last year or two, it doesn't look like that anymore. The good news is the underbelly of it didn't change that much. So once you are comfortable with the new interface, you'll be okay. So let's see. Let me just give a quick preview. I'll be showing you three types of processes, or three ways to look for and do research on Beta.Sam.Gov. Soon, it's not going to be beta anymore, but it still is for now. So if the next surprise is that the beta goes away, don't get scared. That's the new iteration. It was supposed to be launched on Tuesday. So far, they just refreshed the look and feel, but not that. So it's coming. It's imminently coming. So we will be doing three things. One is a simple search. Then we'll be doing some standard reports. And then the big kahuna will be doing an intro to ad hoc reports. Don't get scared. We'll walk through it. And what I would like you to do as a takeaway from here is just be comfortable playing with it and creating some. You cannot mess up the system. And if you create a report that doesn't work, you just create a new one. In fact, that's what I often do when I get frustrated. Create a new one. So let's dig into this. So let's do the simple search first. And I'm going to switch my screen, and you'll be able to see my browser window coming up. So one feature, and I wanted to show you this live as I'm doing it, because I want you to understand and kind of be prepared for the experience. One feature of the refreshed Beta.Sam is that this pop-up will be coming up on every single screen unless you make it go away. So in a great sacrifice of my sanity, as I was putting the slides together, I held myself back from hitting OK so that this would keep showing up so I could show it to you today. One of the cool things that this has is there's a video link here. It's the tiniest thing. To access a video highlighting the design change, just go to this link. They actually have some pretty good videos. I did not go to this one in particular, but there's some other ones that they have that I'll show you just below. But the screen will pop up, you make it go away. So hopefully you won't see this on my screen again. All right, so I am not signed in. This is what you see when this first shows up. A couple of ways to orient yourself. The sign-in button on the top right here. Then you have the search and the data bank buttons, which we'll be looking at later. And then this is the resource section, bottom right, that is pretty useful. There are some videos, there are some terminology explanations here, and some quick start guides, which could all be good refreshers for you. If you're logged in, if you have a login to login.gov, if your company has a sam.gov profile set up, you will be using the same information to log in here. So I will, let's see, I will just log in right now. And this, I'm not sure why this requires a login, because all the information in here is public information anyway. The only proprietary is if you create any searches that you save or any reports that you save. That's the only. Oh, good. That still keeps popping up. Okay. All right. So I am logged in. Because I logged in recently, about an hour ago, it didn't send me the whole password that I have to click on and two-factor authentication from my phone, but it would do that. So this is the, let me go here, the home screen. And again, this happened yesterday. So I am not an expert on this particular interface. There's no way we could have predicted that, but we will go through it together. Please, if you're lost, I don't mean to leave anybody behind. Please speak up or type up, and we'll figure things out. So the first thing we do is the simple search. What do we want to find? There are a couple of things, a couple of databases that are aggregated here. We'll be focusing on contract opportunities, and you could do a simple search here to start with. So I'm not sure what my computer is pulling from, but let's search for landscaping. I try to do keyword searches, especially initially, that everybody kind of understands the scope of work. I don't want to do cloud program management or research and development in neuroscience, because I want you to understand, at least when we're looking at titles, about what the heck this means. So if you look at my presentation, and you'll see the screenshot that I created yesterday, the column on the left was not as good. In fact, we were not able to filter by any of this yesterday. So this is an addition. They're working 24/7, and that's fantastic. So you still have to start off with something pretty general. And for example, if you wanted to start with an X code, you could do that. So if you wanted to, I don't remember what the X code for landscaping is, but if I wanted to do IT and I type in 541519, it would show me things in that X code. It may have things that have that are not in IT, but maybe has a serial number of 541519 because the keywords match. So you may get some false positives. But here is a list of opportunities. There's the dates and kind of the timeliness information on the right. And on the left, you have an idea for how you could narrow it down. So you could search for things that are active, or you could look for past opportunities as well. You could, which obviously increases. Now I have 22,000 results. How many did I have that are active? Just 885. If I only want to look for opportunities that are, for example, a request for information or RFI, or for award notices, then I can do that. Actually, RFI is not one of the choices, so we'd probably do sources sought or pre-solicitation. Yes, we will click on one of the opportunities, absolutely. Amy asked if we could click on one. It did work for me yesterday, so please keep your fingers crossed that it works today. But yeah, we will go into that. So you could narrow it down here. You could narrow things down by set aside. One question I get sometimes is, why bother looking at inactive? And I will answer that question when we go and look at a particular record. So I'm just going to pick on the first one. It is for the Department of Energy. It is in, let's see, Western Rocky Mountain region. Okay. All right, so let's click on that one. Oh no, a couple of people are saying that things aren't coming up. Let's see, I hope it works. I was able to pull one up, and if this doesn't work, I actually have a screenshot of one yesterday, so we'll go to that. All right, excellent. So landscaping and snow removal, and this has not changed. The way that the opportunity, the information that the opportunity contains has not changed since this was FPDS or the previous iterations of this. Yeah, I will show you how to save it. So contract details, this was an award, so it has award details. If it's an upcoming RFP or sources sought notice, it will not have that, obviously. The classification, what next goes in PSC, it has descriptions, attachments. What this does not have anymore, well, actually, this didn't have any attachments. I wonder if it has attachments, if it would have a tab like SPDS did for attachments, but they are also listed here. The reason why it may be useful to you to have upcoming as well as archived or expired opportunity listings is because at the bottom of all of them is contact information for the contracting office. So Eileen Ray at this agency with this phone number and email address has bought landscaping services before. So if you're trying to sell landscaping services in Colorado to the Department of Energy, Eileen Ray may know something about that. Whether or not this was already awarded or not, she is a person that you may want to contact and try to set up a meeting or try to understand when do they have landscaping or snow removal opportunities coming up. Especially if there are not that many things in the pipeline, especially if you narrow things down and there's only 2 or 3, and you can't find any opportunities at your target agency that are coming up, looking at historic data will help you identify at least the procurement offices and the contact information for those people. One thing you can do, and this is market research tip from a long, long time ago, is copy and paste the phone number or the email address into your favorite search engine and see what comes up. And you may be surprised about how much information you could find on a contracting officer. Do not stalk them at their house. But short of that, anything useful for your market research, anything to do with their government contracting work may be interesting and useful to you in your pursuit. So saving opportunity. So you scroll up to the top, and what you can do is you could follow this opportunity. So if you click on follow, that's it. What happens is any opportunity I follow will show up in the workplace, workspace rather. So let me go back a second, actually, to my list of opportunities. I hope I didn't screw this up. I might have screwed it up. Yeah, it's funny about how the back buttons work. Okay, good, this works. So what I can do is so remember, I searched for landscaping and active. I didn't narrow it down by any other way. If I only want to search for landscaping at, for example, I could type in an agency or I could scroll. I'm just going to pick on USAID. No matches found. Okay, never mind. So this list we just learned is not exclusive to the agencies that have opportunities. It just pulls from a list of all federal agencies. So you know what? I'm pretty sure the Department of Homeland Security, if I could spell it right, has some buildings that they need to have landscaping. Okay. So 17. All right. So what I can do is, here's my list of opportunities for landscaping at Homeland Security. That's a great list. I want to keep it. I want to be able to run this search again. So if you go up to where it says Actions and click on Save, I'm going to save this as, the zombies was my, it's the search that you'll see in the slides chapter. It was my kind of a dummy search. Landscaping DHS. Now, what happened was, this was funny, the save button wouldn't come up. So I deleted all my text and then I typed it back in and then the save button came up. So if it's grayed out, just try it again. And they are working overtime to fix all of this. All right. So far, and I have the save successfully pop up. So far I have saved 2 things. I saved the search and I followed if it took. So we'll go to the workspace, and the workspace is, it's mostly for the active searches. It doesn't really tie into the data bank very well. It might as of today, but it hasn't so far. So, and you may not see this because I logged in with my federal credentials. You may not see the federal organization stuff. Don't worry about it. You want to look at your saved searches and the opportunities that you're following. That's what you're saving. So let's see. My saved searches will have, here's our landscaping DHS, here's the zombie before, and here's what I did actually for work previously. And in fact, this was a search that I saved in December. So even though the interface changed, they did not delete all the things that I had saved, unlike the major overhaul that they did last time. And then I'll go back to the workspace again, and I will look at the opportunities that I'm following, and I should be able to see that Department of Energy opportunity in the list, so that anytime, yeah, I think that's it, because it was an award notice. So this one will not get updated at all. But if you clicked on one that was active, you could tick how often you want to receive emails about notifications about any changes to it, and you could unfollow, and you could also register yourself as an interested entity if you wanted, if you want your information to come up in relationship with to that opportunity. Let's just make sure that it is the one that I saved a minute ago. I don't usually follow opportunities, so it's that one. I should probably set up some searches. All right, so let me take a sip of tea here, and please let me know if there's any questions regarding simple searches and specific opportunities. Yeah, you don't know the name of it, you have to match the number. Will they add the subject name? I cannot speak to what GSA will or will not do. I surely hope they will. And you have to keep a, yeah, you have to keep a spreadsheet. I see what you mean. All right, so let me go back to that. Yeah, so what Neil is saying is that you have the record ID, you have the description of the type of notice that it was, but the agency and the actual title of the opportunity is not on here, which is really not helpful. I agree. So there is no way right now to make this better, and creating, yeah, the old, yeah, the FVO did have more information on it. So I see what you mean about creating a spreadsheet to follow it may be one way to do it. I don't know if that may be the best thing for now. Certainly submit suggestions to Beta.Sam. I'm pretty sure they're overwhelmed, but they are working on all of these kind of changes. I will add this to my notes as well. This is really good feedback. Yeah, so anytime you notice things that should seem obvious but aren't, yeah, bring it to my attention, bring it to GSA's attention, let the PTAC know if they're talking to the folks that create this, then that would absolutely be useful for us to take away. What do you find the award contract value? We will get to that. So what this simple search does is look at individual opportunities, past or present. This does not tie into the awards database. One of the goals for the system is to eventually tie in the upcoming opportunities and the awards so that you have a whole life cycle or multiple life cycle view of a particular requirement as it evolves throughout its life within a particular agency. So for example, if there's a need for landscaping services and there's a contract that comes out every 5 years, you should be able to see all of the awards as well as the upcoming opportunity all together. They're not quite there yet. There are some private data aggregator companies that do that for a fee. I would say this is the goal of Beta.Sam, is to tie that together. They haven't done it. We could certainly do it manually, and I'll show you how to look at the disparate records and what are some key terms or data points that would logically tie them in, but it's not a foolproof system. All right. So if there are no questions about the individual ad hoc searches, let me show you one. I'm sorry, the simple searches. Let me show you one more thing. One thing that we tried to do this morning before the webinar officially got started is try to find some events, because industry days, pre-solicitation conferences, small business outreach events are listed as, and they are recorded in Beta.Sam as special notices. What you will see here so far is a distinct lack of criteria as you do an initial search. So you could look for a particular agency, or you could look for a keyword. You type it in here as well, but you can't search for just special notice or just an award. You have to start here, and you could put in events. You could put in industry day as one of the PTAC folks suggested. I think Delana it was. Or you could put in solicitation, pre-solicitation, or conference, or something like that. So if I type in events, we'll have different kinds of events here. And okay, and then I could see now I can't filter it again. Oh, I'm sorry, that's because I didn't select a domain. So we want contract opportunities, that's important. Okay, I'm sorry, this is new to me as well. So within contract opportunities, we're looking for events, and then we could narrow it down by the kind of notice or organization or date or things like that. So if I only want to look at things that are the special notice, I'm sorry, was the top one. That's usually how events come up. You could also, let's say, want to exclude Department of Defense. Okay, let me get to that in a second step. So you could also look at for event information for your agency's Office of Multi-Disadvantaged Business Utilization, Policy Group, or there is a site on Hallways that the Aussie Council put together that has a listing of all of the small business offices and all of their events, which I will paste into chat in a little while, actually have it bookmarked here. So remind me if I forget. All right, how do we exclude federal organizations? All right, so let's say events, federal organizations. I think that may be difficult to do. You would have to select all of them, and I don't even know if that's possible. So let's say we select all of them. No, we can't do that. All right, so if we, yeah, you would have to click on all of them and then unclick Department of Defense. That's probably the only way to do it right now, unless you're looking for a specific entity. So you may be better off trying to look for one or two agencies at a time if you really want to have a narrow set of agencies that are reported. If you know the back end, how to do it. I do not know the back end. If anybody does, speak up. Okay, so let me switch back to my PowerPoint here, just to give you a sense of what you'll have to go back to afterwards. So I didn't leave you to flounder around in the searches. So here's the official site that you come to, your sign-in information, data bank, and kind of the menu orientation, and then the searches. Okay. How to look for opportunities and narrow it down, save an action, and then within a specific opportunity, how to follow it. I think I did a search for, for zombies when I did that. So, all right. Okay. Let's look at standard reports. So once we are logged in, you not only have access to upcoming opportunities, and by upcoming opportunities, what I really mean is individual opportunity listings, whether they are in the future or in the past. And like I mentioned, looking at past opportunities could be useful. But there are also a couple of data banks that have reports that you could pull that will show you awarded actions. Now we're going to switch hats and not look at opportunity listings and opportunity-based searches, but rather reporting on awarded actions. So if we go to the data bank, there are a couple of report options in there, and I will we will go through two of them today, and I'll show you that there are others, but we really won't spend much time on that. So the data bank has a report on historic information, on actions that have already happened, but that are still useful to you in your market analysis. So the kind of reports, we're looking at contract data. Static reports, oh, did somebody have a question? Heard somebody's mic go up. Okay. So static reports are very standardized information. Usually, for example, like the COVID report. What is the spending where COVID was checked off, or a spending in response to a particular event. They're usually fixed in time. Think of if a congressional committee or if a newspaper wanted a standard spending report and they keep submitting FOIA requests for the same thing, you'll eventually come up, I'm sorry, it's a static report. You'll eventually come up with those. Those are the static reports. They are built, they are complete, they don't really change, they are a snapshot of a particular place in time. I'm not gonna spend much time on that. For the folks that are selling medical supplies and COVID response services and efforts, the COVID report would be interesting to you potentially, because you'll know which agencies are spending money and how they're doing it to respond to the COVID efforts, as an example. What we will focus on today is the standard report and the ad hoc report. Standard reports, there are 4 pages of them, and I'll actually switch to my presentation because I kind of pre-did all the work to make it really easy to explain this information. And then we'll go through and we'll do one of them. So what the standards reports have, I'll say this, they were not created for industry. They were created for agencies to be able to report on pretty regular annual aspects of how they're performing and how they are awarding work. Some of them are internal, some of them are for congressional or for OMB, and some of them are useful as government-wide. For example, if I wanted to know in particular NAICS codes where work is being done or who are the vendors, I could pull that up really quick and identify some companies with a certain NAICS code, which makes my own market research for the purpose of competition easier. So the standard reports, we come to the data bank space that I showed you, and we'll have starting in the middle of that page. So 2 of them come up before the page break, and there are 4 pages of them. Instead of scrolling through 4 pages on the screen, I kind of did the work for you here, and what you'll see. Here, yeah. And what you'll see is if you look at the notes page of this PowerPoint, and I hope I won't screw it up if I do this. So I'm in my PowerPoint. Second. Okay. So here are my standard reports. If you look at the notes page, it has all of the reports and the explanations for them, so that you have a handy reference. Instead of creating another document, I just dropped them in there, hoping that that's an easy way, one place to access all the information about them. If you look at this, the prior page here, it will have the report name and then the same information about that report that is in the notes page, all captured for you, and you could scroll through the 4 pages. So these are the 36 reports you can get. There are 35 listed here because there are 2 competition reports. One is for an old way of measuring it, and one is for the new way of measuring it. I didn't look at my summary. And the one that I'm most familiar with, the one that I use in my work every first business day of the month, is I pull a small business goaling report, which identifies how the government or how a particular agency did up to within a certain date range as far as meeting its small business and socioeconomic goals. I'll show you that report, but the way that I run it, the information in there will be indicative of how you run the standard reports generally. So let me switch to the live one for that. Okay, so here's our contract data report. And by the way, you could save them. So you see the little blank stars next to all of these. I didn't put this into the PowerPoint, so this point you'll have to remember. But I could click on a little star and it'll make it black, so that adds it to my favorites. Because I literally run the small business billing report every month, it is one of my favorites. It's not very intuitive, but if you check the box for favorites, it'll only show the favorites in here. So this is the bookmark for the standard report. So I'm pulling up the small business billing report, and it's pretty set up. I can't mess this up. I also can't pick a lot. So I could clear a State Department. I only run it for my agency, but if I were doing it as a small business, I may want to look at different departments or government-wide. So you may want to not narrow it down by agency or save different versions of save different versions. You could also the date ranges could be up to 5 years. So from any point in time that is less than 5 years total, you could run that report. The way that, and I'll just show you how I do it in my job, is I run this particular report from the first day of the calendar year. From the first day of this federal fiscal year, which started on October 1, 2020, and I'm going to run it to the end of the month. So today is April 28th. So I'll just run it to 4/28/2021. The common objection is that this data is not going to be current, because if a contracting officer recorded something yesterday in FPDS, which is the database that feeds into this, that's still on the back end, even though you can't see it anymore. If that action was recorded yesterday, it probably won't show up because it takes a 24-hour cycle at least to get the system synced up. That's just the reality of federal data. This is the database of record. This is the best there is, and if it's incomplete, that's just that speaks to the availability of data. There's not a better source to get it. There are some the data sources may put some the third-party data sources like the private companies may put some speculative or estimated data that is their estimates and not the actual. This only reports on what actually happened that they're able to put up there. So that's a pretty long preface for just a simple search. So I'm going to execute this report. And sometimes it doesn't work at all because the connection was set for some unknown reason. All right, let's go back. All right, small business billing report. 10/1/2020, 4/28. And you could put in a future date. It just it won't cause an error. So the future date doesn't really matter. It'll just won't return things that haven't happened yet. And okay, I think yes, this works. All right, great. So the output here, the format of it will be very familiar because the ad hoc reports will look similar. In fact, let me make this bigger. So this is the output of the small business billing report. I only looked at the Department of State. If you have other agencies, they will all show up in here as well. And what you can do here is you could drill down. So if you right-click on any of the column headings, it allows you to sort. If I had more than one, sorting may have been useful. I could also drill by any of the parameters in here. What I usually do is I drill down by the funding office, because it's not good enough to know for me how the Department of State did with respect to particular socioeconomic goals. I want to know which of our offices and bureaus did well and did poorly. So I'm going to go and drill by like the funding office name, and it will list all of the different funding offices. Now, these are the end user offices. These are the program offices within the department to see how they did with respect to meeting their small business goals. So I could sort this by, let's see, what does it allow me to do? I could sort this by ascending or descending alphabetically. Not really helpful. Could be helpful for you in other categories. You may want to sort by the number of actions or by the small business dollars. Total small business eligible dollars, that is total dollars. Small business eligible means dollars that small business could have competed on. So full and open comes in here because full and open does not prohibit small businesses from bidding on that work. But if I want to know which were the agencies or which were the bureaus with the largest dollar awards to small business, I will want to sort it by small business dollars. What you could also see if I scroll, and I'm going to scroll to the bottom so I could get the next columns to show up. The small business goaling drills down to small disadvantaged business 8A, and then it goes on to the women-owned and hub zone and the service disabled veteran-owned business. So if I right-click on small business dollars, I could sort it by descending. Descending is the biggest on top. I will be able to see that what happens when you enlarge a table. You can see the end of it. That the Bureau of Consular Affairs, that's the office that issues passports and visas, they spent the most dollars this fiscal year so far with small businesses, and then diplomatic security, IRM, INL, etc. And I'm speaking in tongues, in acronyms for the different bureaus here. If you want to know more about State Department procurement, that's a subject for a whole other webinar. I could obviously spend days on it because it's literally my job. What you can do with this report is, let's see, go up here, and you could print it, you could send it. It could also be, I'm going to make this smaller because I think it's screwed up. Screwed up my criteria. What I can do is, there used to be a different, yesterday, there was a different symbol for export, but I could export this to a spreadsheet. You don't need to do much of anything here. The default is CSV, which works with Excel. You could export it as an Excel file with formatting. It doesn't really matter. It depends on how familiar you are with Excel. Don't embed the images because that's just annoying. If you're trying to sort things later, you'll have to remove all the images. And then you could export it and you'll get a spreadsheet that has all this information on it. You could receive this action with any, pretty much any of the standard reports. Some of them you'll see, and I will show you the data bank again. Some of the reports are unchecking favorites, so let me see all of them. Some of these are, see, there's the old competition report, don't click on that. Some of them say anomaly reports. Anomaly reports are reports that highlight things that went wrong. For example, this one is where they had competitive procedures but received only one offer. Clearly, that's not what you want to do. That's not the goal of competition, but that's where one offer happened. If you remember the old SPDS reports, those used to be in red, so much easier to see. Now they're all in black, kind of fades into the background. As a bidder, as a vendor, it may be interesting for you to know where the customer agency is just not getting a lot of bids, because potentially that's a more open opportunity, since there's not, by the government's own admission, there's not a lot of competition. This is also there's a report on here where I forget the name of it, but the top vendor report or something like that, where it's a small business set aside, but the vendor is one of the top companies. So a small business set aside, but Lockheed Martin is the vendor. And this is what the Washington Post likes to make a lot of noise about every year. Most of the time, how those happen is that a vendor gets an award, they have a DUNS number, that contract is good for 5 years, and then that company gets bought by somebody. And because the contract has not been novated yet, has not been changed over into the new, or even if it has, still the legacy information is out there. So this vendor, this DUNS number, is now owned by Lockheed, but that doesn't change the fact that they want it as a small business. So usually there's a lot of pomp and circumstance, but not a lot of actual concern underlying it. As a data nerd, I like to one of the things that are cause for concern and things that are just more more interesting, but not terribly. All right, so that's the standard report. If you want to click on any of them, what you'll be able to do is narrow it down by year and by the department, and it'll have a very similar input with the data fields all selected for you. And this looks exactly like the state.gov report that I showed. So unless there are questions about the standard reports, we will switch to the ad hoc report, which just a moment you may have been waiting for or terrified of, but nonetheless, this is the one that we should become familiar with. Max date range is 5 years for any of that. They may be playing around with it. It may change, but last time I ran the report, it's 5 years. Also, no more than 30,000 lines of data. It just won't come up on a report. So the first 30,000 will come up, and I have no idea how it gets sorted. So I recommend that if you have any report, standard or ad hoc, that would have more than 30,000 lines of data, narrow it down somehow. Maybe do a report for every year or every 6 months, and then put them into a big spreadsheet and dedupe it. That may be a way to go, but those are the parameters. All right. So let me switch back to the PowerPoint, and I will walk you through what it's going to look like before we jump into the live session, just so you know what to expect. And so maybe you'll be able to kind of play along and think along. And if you have any questions as to the live demo, you could say them. Now, as I mentioned when we started today, I'm not an expert on this in particular. It's a pretty new system. I'm still trying to figure it out. I am familiar enough to be able to pull the data that I need, which really is the most that I recommend that you become. You want to be able to pull data that you need to make good business decisions. You don't need to know all the esoteric stuff that you will never use. If you have the time, excellent. In fact, if you learn some cool tips and tricks and feel like sending me a note with that and teaching me, I will be thrilled. So please do that if you have the time and patience to do it. So ad hoc report is a report that you build yourself based on all of the parameters and the data fields that exist in federal contracting reporting databases. It's built on what the contracting officers have to submit and have to record and keep track of anytime they award or modify or deobligate or close out a procurement action. If you are familiar with the FPDS searches of all the data fields that you looked in a report, if you looked at a specific one, those are the data points and the data sets that make up the ad hoc report and that you can choose from. If you really wanted to scare yourself, I did a screen capture. This is an old screen capture from a report, but that is all the potential things that you could look for. I don't recommend it. It's overkill. Ultimately, you will have so much information that you may get frustrated and you may not find it useful at all because you just won't know where to focus first. So let's not do that. In fact, build a simple report, see what analysis you could get from it, see what's useful to you, and then you could always either change it or create a new one based on what makes sense for you in your business. So don't do this. What we will do is we will click on the ad hoc report, and you will get the opportunity to select from the award or other transaction information. Other transaction or OTA is non-FAR transactions with industry. They're not bounded by federal acquisition regulations. They are for prototyping and R&D. If you're in those fields, it may be useful to you. I am not an expert on OTAs, and I have not run an OTA report. I just haven't had time to do it for my own edification, so I am not familiar with that. For the purposes of today's discussion, I think our award report will be plenty of goodies to keep you interested. So this is what we're going to do. Data bank, ad hoc report. We're going to create a report, and we're going to use the report builder. Now, there's a way to create a blank report. You can eventually, if you know exactly what you're looking for and it's simple, you can, but the report builder makes it easy for you to identify the buckets that you will be selecting and picking. What we'll do is we will start our ad hoc report. This is what the report builder will look like. We will select from the different criteria, the date, the attributes, and the metrics of the report, and I'll explain what that means. We will save it, and then we'll run. Right? So there are, in addition to the date, and you don't need to worry about the date modified. The date signed will be good enough. It's the date when that particular action was signed, so not necessarily the date for when the contract started, but rather when that particular data entry happened. Now remember, for the purpose of this data set, the purpose of Beta.Sam award records, anytime that a contracting officer does something to a requirement, any kind of change, they will put in a new line item. So for example, if I award a contract, that's a line item. If I issue a modification changing the delivery date, that's another line item. If I modify it, adding $15 to account for toll charges, that's another line item. So what you have is as many line items per procurement instrument ID or per contract number as there exists. And there are some ways to narrow those down, but it will be a bottom-up kind of analysis, and it won't be one contract number and all the things in that contract number. There are ways to aggregate that. There are certainly ways to build in some pivot tables in your data set when you pull it and put it in a spreadsheet that will make it easier to aggregate by whatever criteria makes sense to you. But I just wanted to let you know that this will show every single line item in a particular, related to a particular requirement or contract or procurement vehicle. Right. So the builder steps, we'll have the dates, we'll have the attributes, and we'll have the metrics. And then we'll be able to qualify or filter that data by the attributes and the metrics. Think of the attributes as the qualitative, qualitative attributes or qualitative criteria of a particular opportunity or a particular contract, and I'll explain what those are. And the metrics would be the dollars or the numbers related information. So how many actions, how many dollars were obligated, or the total contract value of a particular award. And you could qualify on those as well. So you could filter by any attribute or by any metric. I'll show you what that means. So the attributes are the different qualitative information about a particular requirement. They relate to and they comprise those 225 potential data actions. What I did is in parentheses, I put in some examples of that. And in fact, what I'm also giving you here is a little cheat sheet of things that I recommend you select when you're doing your own requirements. In fact, when we do a data pull today, I won't select all of them just to give us a simple report that doesn't take too long to pull, so you'll see what it looks like. But then for your own information and as you're building your own data sets, this could be a reference sheet for don't forget to include this information. again, your mileage may vary. You may want to include legislative mandates. You may want to include the place of manufacture, product origin, etc. And as you hone in on an agency, you may want to know more information about them, or you may want to expand and do a broader search. So we will be choosing from that. The metrics, those are the dollar and the number of actions. I recommend you focus on the dollars obligated and the number of actions. You could put in the total contract value and the base and exercise options value. What you should not do is add them up ever. Because if I have a line item that I'm obligating $1,000 and the total ceiling value of that contract is $1 million, and then next month I'm obligating $1,000 and the ceiling value of that contract remains $1 million, you do not want to add up 1 million and 1 million because the ceiling value has not changed. So you don't want to double it. What you do want is to aggregate and add up the obligation, positive or negative. If I'm de-obligating or taking away dollars from a contract, you want to know that. You want to add up the actual dollars obligated because as of the time this transaction is made, this is how much money is being added to or subtracted from that specific contract. The number of actions is interesting. It's not, if you had to pick, I would do dollars, but if the number of actions could be illustrative. If it's $1 million contract and there were 20 actions on it, or if it's $1 million action, $1 million contract and there were 1,000 actions on it, you'll get a sense for how much paperwork and how much minutiae it takes to execute on it and how many changes there were, and the value of each individual action under that contract could be useful for your business as well. The number of records, I'm not sure exactly what that refers to, where that pulls from, so I haven't investigated the data set, so just won't do it. So what I'll do is I'll show you that you have this information in your background, and if you need to refer to it, it's in there, but we'll do a live search of this information as we go, as we proceed, and then you'll be able to refer when you get the files in your own time as you do your research so that you don't forget. All right, so I'm gonna switch to my ad hoc report window, and then, no, it will not show unit cost. This is the data reported by contract. This is by contracting officers on their spending. This is not intended to be that level of detail on award information. There's no way to get here from there, Neil. Good question. There are other databases that you can get. You may have to look at the particular RFP statement of work sections. You could look at section B of the RFPs. Some of the information is proprietary, so you can't get that. And as another data source for unit values, you could even look at GSA schedules for similar products to see what's out there in the market. That is already government price, so it's all of the markups are built into that. All right, so let's switch to the ad hoc report, and let's look at the award IDV information. Now, I will make this concession right off the bat. I have created these reports, and some of them work and are repeatable and are great. And some of them I've gone back and I could never recreate it again. So you could always just click on a particular report if it's really bothering you, and you could delete it. You could also copy it. You could, if I want to, for example, if I wanted to do a Puerto Rico report for 2020, I could do one for 2021 by copying it, creating one, running new numbers, and saving it as a new report. Sometimes what I find is easier, instead of trying to remember what was in a previous report, especially if I ran a big, huge, all-encompassing one and then I get lost in it, I'll just create a new report so it's faster and easier. So I'm going to create a report. I'm going to do a new report builder. See, some of this should be familiar based on what I showed you. I'm trying to make it as unsurprising as possible. And because I want a data set that comes up relatively quickly for us so we can see what we're looking at, I will narrow it down to a couple of months in a preceding fiscal year so that you will get a sense for a fuller data set. 2021 is pretty spotty because things are not due. In fact, the SBA just finalized our 2020 small business numbers last month, as in halfway through the next fiscal year. So the date for confirming, for certifying that data are pretty far in the future. So 2021 data is still under construction. So let's do August and September 01, 2020, and the end date would be 09, 30, 2020. August and September, as you're probably well aware, are the most interesting and active months in federal contracting. So I will admit that we will not get a very good, broad, multi-year picture, but that's a huge data set which will take forever to come up, and I'd rather you get a sense of what you could get out of this database rather than a perfect result, because we're still not going to be searching for everybody's actionable targets in here. So the way to look for the attributes, and you do have the cheat sheet to refer to. So each of these boxes includes the information that you want, and you could switch back to the PowerPoint and you'll see what those buckets contain. You could also search for some of them. The search is a little bit, it can be a little bit frustrating. So let me take some things from here and then I'll show you how the search works, because sometimes I can't go back out of the search. So here's all the buckets. And what I want to do is I want to search for business. Now, this does not filter. This just enables me to add the columns that I want. So for example, business size selection, click on it, contracting officer's business size determination. So this is the contracting officer determines whether the award went to a small business or not. So I'm selecting this, and you could double click on it, and it will add it to the selected button, bucket. You could also click on something and then put it on the right-hand side using the arrow. I'm not selecting these because they don't always get filled out. You could certainly do it on your own, but just in the interest of time and showing you what's out there. So I'm going to go back to your search results, and then you click on the search results and it will populate all of these back again. So I'm going to look at the contract identification. Now, what I want is procurement instrument ID number. That's the contract number. I want that. So let me click the arrow. I could have double clicked it as well. I may want to look at the solicitation number. I may want to look at reference IDV PID. IDV is indefinite delivery vehicle. Procurement instrument ID. Translate that from government ease to English is if this award was a task order or a delivery order under a larger contract like GWAC, IDC, GSA schedule. Let me translate that again. Under a government-wide acquisition contract and indefinite delivery contract or General Services Administration, GSA schedule, it would have that contract number as a reference indefinite delivery vehicle number. For example, if I were searching for light bulbs and I wanted to know which contracts for light bulbs were under GSA schedules, I could select this box and it would come up with all the light bulbs. And then I could scroll through and see which of these IDV numbers start with GS ... That will give me an idea. Oh, this contract, regardless of the actual contract number, regardless of the vendor and of the agency, if the IDV, the reference vehicle, starts with GS and it's a 10-digit number, that's the GSA schedule. So I could sort it by all the things that were GSA scheduled, or if I don't have one, all the things that are not, because then I could pursue the agencies that buy light bulbs
without using GSA schedules. Hope that was not too much of a tangent. I just wanted to give you a sense for the kind of inferences and the kind of analysis you could make with the data. If you want to discuss it in Q&A later, make a note to yourself, and I'll be happy to go back to it. Right. So other information that's useful. So department and agency, what I would like to focus on is the funding source. Both department and agency information and funding source will have the department information, but you want to know who was the requirements author, who is the end user, who is the customer, whose pocket is the money coming out of. So you want to know funding department name, funding agency name, funding office name. I clicked on them in the order that I want them to show up. You could also just click all of them and then you say, you know what, I want the department to show up later. So I'm going to click the right arrow or the left or the up or down arrows here to move them up or down. This is just a hierarchy. Remember, I'm building my column based on this box on the right here. So this will be my column A, B, C, D, and going to the right. Right. So I'm going to go back to my search results. So I want these to show up. And I will look at the product or service information. And I want to know a lot of stuff about the actual product. Because if I run this search, all you'll know is the contract number and the agencies without any context of what it is that we're buying. Is just that we're buying, who is buying from small business and what contract numbers they're using in the last 2 months of 2020, which is going to be very humongous and very not useful. So I want to know description of requirement. My favorite data point in all of this database is the description of requirements. It's not always great, but it is the most substantive information you'll get without like submitting a FOIA request or tracking down the actual contract. Because if there's any narrative description, it will be in here. And you could do some cool searches on that and filters in your spreadsheet. So description of requirements. You also may want to put down your NAICS code, your NAICS description if you want, your PSC code, etc. And then I promise I'll show you the search. So you get how this works now. So now what I want is, let's see, I want to know all the contracts where place of performance was New York. So I'm going to type in place of performance. Place of, actually, let's just do place of, because it'll do incomplete. Oh, you know what? The reason this did not work is because I am still in product or service information. There is no place of performance in product service information. It's in a different bucket. So I'll go back to my search results, or I think you click this button. The search gets a little wonky, but click this button and it works. And now I could do place of, and it'll give me anything that says place of. So place of performance, country name. I was looking for things in New York, so I could do state code, and I'm going to add that. All right. So I think that's a pretty good data set. I want to know things with a particular NAICS code or PSC code, and I want to see what state that was produced, that was sold in, or rather, what state that was performed in. Now, I didn't filter. So right now, if I pull this data search, I'm going to get all of the data for August and September of 2020, and I will find out these bits of information about all of the procurements in those 2 months. What I will choose next is the kind of metrics I want the dollars, and I want the number of actions, like I said before. Now I want to qualify the attributes. So I don't want to know everything that was performed in New York in August and September of 2020. I will qualify or filter my data to only include certain things. Now, I do not need to filter only by the things that are contained in here. Unlike the old PDF ad hoc, I could filter by anything, whether or not I'm choosing that column to come up. So let's say I only want information. Let's see, I'm going to pick a filter where the vendor socioeconomic information is vendor, I'm just looking for small business. Small, no. Okay. You know what? So you could do a search here, but you know what? Let's just see if I could do. Part of the challenges is that this has some legacy information. So some of the small disadvantage and self-certified small disadvantage, some of these are not that great, but let's pick on one that has a defined category. So we want the vendor service disabled veteran-owned business. I'm going to put it in here. Now this is a filter. So it's going to ask me if I want to filter that. I'm going to qualify it. See, this is now selectable. So qualify, and I could select. And now we have the select list, which is empty. I'm going to click on that. The available choices for is vendor type service disabled veteran-owned business is yes or no. If I only want awards in those months of the year to companies that are service disabled veteran-owned businesses, no, actually, that's not right. If I want awards to companies that are service disabled veteran-owned businesses, then I will pick that. Here's a difference. And I paused to make sure I was using the right terminology. This does not mean, my choice does not mean that I'm picking a set aside. So this will include any award where the vendor type is what I selected. If I wanted to choose what kind of set aside it was, then I would have to pick a different criteria. That would be under competition information, where I will choose type of set aside. The difference is if an SDVOSB, service disabled veteran or small business, if they won a contract that was full and open competition, or was total small business set aside, or if they happen to be any other socioeconomic category, let's say they were also 8A, if that company won an 8A competition, the set aside would have been 8A. But because the vendor is also SDVOSB, their type would still be reflected. This is important for, for your business information, but also for the agency goals, because we count the businesses, we don't count the set aside. So regardless of what the competition was, we get credit for all the socioeconomic categories that we were able to meet during a fiscal year. So this is the double counting debate. It's technically not double counting because the buckets are separate. I'm not counting a veteran-owned business against an 8A bucket. I'm just counting 8A and SDV. And if a company happens to meet more than one, they just fall into more than one bucket. But that's a philosophical discussion for another time. So now my criteria is, my filter is, I'm only going to come up with all of these awards to companies that happen to be service disabled veteran or small business. And you know what? I'm going to pick the type of set aside that was small business. What is it? Why am I not able to pick that? Because it's not a type of set aside, it is the expense competed. The way to look for small business set aside is under expense competed, it's full and open after exclusion of sources. So this is the kind of rabbit holes we get into when we're doing marketing analysis in federal. So full and open after exclusion of sources means you exclude ineligible sources, which are entities that do not meet the small business criteria, and then it's a total small business set aside. So if I want that kind of competition and select and list, yes. So I'm sorry. Full and open competition after exclusion of sources. Do I want things that are wait, why does it do that? Select in the list. Okay, so I'm going to select in this list. I clicked on the wrong thing, that's why. Select. Sometimes this doesn't work so well. I'm going to select. Okay, selected. Yes. We'll open after exclusion of sources. Okay, and then I'm going to do that. Okay, so this, I should have been able to select yes. I can't for some reason, but that's okay. We'll see what comes up. All right, so in the interest of time, we're going to move on, but hopefully you'll have an idea. I could also narrow it down to let's say I only want search for, this is where the searches get a little funky. Yeah, I may not be able to do that. Sometimes the search just gets weird. But if I only want product or service information where I want somebody type in a NAICS code for me. Type in any NAICS code that you want. I will take the first one on the list. And we will narrow it down. NAICS code ID equals value 541690. All right. 541690. Thank you. All right. So I'm only looking at awards to service disabled veteran small businesses that are in fully open competition after exclusion of sources, which is small business, in that data book. I may get a 0 data set, which is okay. It is what it is. And then we'll go back and we'll look for others. So I could also qualify it by particular metrics. So for example, if I'm getting too many results, I may want to narrow this down by dollars that are obligated greater than or equal to 0, for example, or greater than $10,000. Or if you want to look for things that are simplified acquisitions, you may want to look for under $250,000 or micro purchases under $10,000. Those are the ways to narrow it down. If you don't have to, I don't recommend doing it. If you do choose to narrow it down a certain value, select it at the report level. Otherwise, it gets screwy. So I'm not going to select this. I'd rather not. The metrics, so somebody asked a question, can you get contract value in the column? Yes, as long as you select the metrics, these are the columns that you will get for the dollar values and number of actions. Thank you for asking that. I made an assumption without actually being explicit about that. All right, so report message. Why does it say message? I don't know, but the report name, we're going to do SDVOSB, NAICS 541690. I'm going to save this. This is very suspenseful. Should have saved by now. Getting a little worried. Okay. Okay, so it exceeded because I had too many stuff, or too many things. All right, so let's go back. And I selected some attributes. So I don't imagine that there were too many awards in that NAICS code to SDVs. So I'm not sure what went wrong, but I'm glad that you're seeing that things do go wrong. So let's, and it may have been that there were no SDV awards with that NAICS code. So let me try the other one, 237210. 237210. So it could have been a null report. If this doesn't work, I'm going to take out the next part and see what happens. 237210. Okay, I'm going to save it. The good thing and the frustrating thing is that it will not save it if it can't come up with the result. So I'm going to save it to my list. What you see here are just other reports that I ran. The first time you do it, it will be blank. That's okay. And then you could write a description to jog your memory later. So I'm going to save it in my report. You could create other folders. I don't see the point. Number of actions means how many transactions there were under a particular contract number. So like I said earlier, anytime that there's an obligation or modification or closeout, any kind of action will have a new line item. It doesn't always mean a number of awards. Number of competitors, it'll mean how many bids were received. So going to run my new report. And it brings me back to the same field. Don't get concerned. It saves the report, which means it's validated that I could actually run it. Now I could run it, which is the same button on the bottom left. And hopefully it won't take too long. Okay, so apparently the filter excludes all the data. Please adjust the filter accordingly. So I'm going to look at my filter, which I cannot do by clicking on here. So I will go back to my report. You click on Report Home. Click on the little button next to it. You go back to Design, or you click on Design. And this is where, and I included this information in the PowerPoint, but remember we had attributes and metrics. When you have a report, for some reason, they decided to put in two completely different names for the same information. So public objects are metrics. And then you go back up, schema objects are attributes. If you forget, you just click on it, it'll be the wrong one, and that's fine. So, so these are my date signed and my, so this says what we filtered by, right? These are all, this is all the available information. This is what our filters were. So I'm not going to qualify on metrics because we chose not to do that. We chose not to qualify by any dollars. I'm going to delete that because it should be blank. And then I could run it again. So see that little lightning bolt there at the top? I'm going to run it again and see if that helps. Nope. Okay. So report home, design. I'm glad that you're seeing a report that came out broken or not right based on the attributes we've selected, because you get to see what we can do to manipulate it so that we do get what we want out of it. So I'm going to look at, let's see, let me bring it back to all objects. Let's see, objects, filter. All right, so if I click the down arrow, nope. What is it? Okay, hold on a second. Objects, attributes, and I looked at product or service information. This is where sometimes I feel that it's easier to just start a new report rather than to try to fix an existing one, unfortunately. So let's see. We're going to prompt. Nope, I don't want to do that. All right. And don't know why it does that. Okay, so that's the date signed. I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time with it. All right, so let's go back to the report. Let's go back to the whole thing. All right, get into the report because from that menu, it's not as easy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete that NAICS code. And now let's see if I could run a report that will not be in that NAICS code. Perhaps there were none that no obligations with that particular NAICS in those 2 months to companies that were SDV/OSB. Unfortunately, there's no elegant way to fix adjust the metrics from that report view that we had. So you would have to go back and open it and do it that way. But once we fix that, so our assumption or our hypothesis that there were SDV/OSB awards in that particular NAICS code didn't work was because there were no awards that matched the two filters. So Royal, to your question, if there were no SDV/OSB awards in NAICS code 541.690 that were awarded to SDV/OSB, it just wouldn't come up. The other one, why that didn't work is the first one that I tried, that report was broken because I had selected the metrics qualification, so by the dollars, but then I didn't put anything in there. So I needed to clear that. If you choose a filter or a qualifier, you have to fill it out or else it will get stuck. So here are the columns that we have. Now remember, I wanted awards in where place of performance was in New York, but I did not select that in the filter. I did that for a reason, because I wanted to show you how you could find that information. So what this report does is it includes 15,612 rows, which has the columns that we asked for. And apparently we only selected enough parameters that all the columns fit neatly on this sheet. But you could select a whole bunch of columns, 200 plus. But for the purposes of this report, this came out pretty fortuitously. So if I only want to identify those SDV/OSB awards in New York, I could do place of performance, and I just sorted it. So this is alphabetical. I could also, remember, I could filter on, let's see, things that are New York. Where's New York? There we go. Select and apply that filter, and we'll see where place of performance is in New York. Now, what you can do with this information, and what I recommend doing with this information. Now, there's a couple of cool things you can do here, and this is, there's some tools. If you want to make a quick graph of it, it does some analytics. Apparently, obviously, dollars obligated is going to be a lot bigger than number of actions. But what this does is create some easy chart based on what the engine here identified would be the most useful bit of information. Whether or not that it is, that's up to us. So I could go back to my grid, or this also do grid and chart together. So you can have the grid and then the chart under it. But let's go back, or the other way around. Let's go back here. What I really want to do is put this into my spreadsheet so I could really create and extract the kind of data that makes sense to me, and use it in my market analysis, and then obviously in subsequent actions. One thing I did not include here is the conditions. Let me switch back to my presentation here. What you can search for as one of the metrics here is, let me make this bigger. Okay, one of the metrics for the transaction information. That's how you could get the contracting office names if the agency provides them. That will differ by department or agency, whether those are publicly available or not. If you're looking for information, for example, for the Department of State, the kind of transaction information, and you'll be able to pick, if you click on that attribute segment, you'll be able to just see entered by, approved by, modified by, and then sometimes you'll get an email address within the Department of State. It will show something like, and I'm going to type it in the chat. It'll be like the result will say something like that. The convention at the State Department is whatever that username is, you add @state.gov, and that's an email address. So if for example you were looking for I don't know, my contract support guy who is not doing any procurements at all, his name is Sean Walden. So if it says Walden S, you add @state.gov and you'll get Sean Walden. Some agencies, I think Bureau of Prisons and Treasury has like full email addresses on there. Add that. I recommend that you add that because you may get some contact information for the contract officers. One way to triangulate and connect that information to if you rewind back to about an hour and a half ago, to the contracting simple searches, you could search by those usernames or those email addresses and see what else that particular person may have coming up. Because quite often, not always, it's not foolproof, but quite often, if a person has been buying a type of product or type of service, they tend to specialize in it. So if there's anything else coming up, you may see their name connected with it. So that may be a useful data point for you going forward. Right. So what I recommend doing next with this data set is you click on the Export to Excel, you get a spreadsheet, and then you'll be able to get a lot of the data points that are useful for you in your analysis and play with it that way. And you could create some pivot tables, and you could create some reports that way as well. So let me see. I have included in the presentation. Oh yeah. Okay. So let me see. All right. So we are at the export to Excel portion. We did that. The file is downloading. And then what are we doing with that data? So if you remember the three sets of information that I showed earlier, or kind of the three buckets that you might want to look for, you were able to triangulate the information you're getting against the questions that you have. Who is buying? How much are they spending? What vendors are there? What socioeconomic categories are being used? And how do you fit into that particular marketplace? Some parameters that you may want to qualify in order to help you answer those questions and prioritize the opportunities, because there are a lot of federal vendors. Maybe based on some of the criteria, like how much money is being spent, where is the contracting office, and well, before 2019, can you go and meet with them? Can you sell to them right now? Everybody is equally available or equally unavailable by phone or video meeting. If you have any relationships there, if they are using small business or not using small business, if they're buying the products you sell or the services you provide, and when are those contracts coming due? You may have, as we were going through the information today, you might have gotten some additional criteria or ideas for additional criteria, how you would utilize and prioritize this data. In fact, if there's some light bulb moments, type them in. What are some things that, based on what you learned today, that you may be able to apply that would help you in your business going forward? So that is the end of the slideshow. I would love to see some of your light bulbs coming through. What you'll also see included in the slides, but are hidden, they're hide slides, are some quick and dirty Excel applications, how to filter and how to build a pivot table in Excel. If you need Excel help, I strongly recommend YouTube. There are fantastic videos on anything. That's how I learned that application. That should help you and navigate that. So with that, and about 10 minutes remaining, I will be happy to answer some questions. I know I missed some in the chat. I was kind of quarter of me was paying attention to that. But I hope this was useful to you. And if you have a question later, if you formulate that, please feel free to send me a note. As I mentioned, I'm not the GSA expert on this, but I think I'm able to help you guys orient it so you find the useful information that is actionable and helps you win some business. So thank you for staying awake. At least I'm assuming you're awake, and happy to chat.
Anna, while we wait for those questions to come in, I don't know if you answered, I don't remember if you answered this earlier, but Neil did have a question in the chat about ad hoc report metrics. Do they show the unit cost?
Right, so they do not show the unit cost because this is a reporting on contract awards and mods. So put yourself in the position of a contracting officer. A unit cost would not roll up to this kind of a report in this kind of database. In fact, unit costs are often proprietary and are not released, they're even exempt from FOIA releases under exception 2, proprietary data. So it's difficult to get to them. Unit costs for products, you could get through GSA schedules. That's going to be your ballpark. And then labor rates, calc.gsa.gov is a really cool tool for labor rates. Again, those are federal fully loaded rates, so you won't get your competitors' proprietary information there, but it's a baseline. It's okay. So I'm reading through number of action. Okay, is there a column that could provide you a number of offers? Yeah, number of offers received is a column. Yeah, absolutely, you could get that. I forget where it is in. Going back to my cheat sheet here. I think it's going to be under competition information. Number of offers is a column that you could pull, absolutely.
And I know you referenced Sharon's question earlier and said you would get to it, and I believe you did, but just want to double check. Where do you find the award contract value? And
award contract value. All right, so you look under metrics, and then the dollars obligated. So this information is a roll-up of all of the transactions. So the dollars obligated is as of a particular transaction that I have to report, how much money am I spending? Then you also have the aggregate columns, which are, I would say, not as reliable, but useful. That's your base and all options value. That's your ceiling value. And then the base and exercised options value, that is how much has been spent on the contract so far. Do not aggregate them. Do not add up those values because they theoretically shouldn't change. Or if they do, they wouldn't change in a logical way to represent total spending on a contract. If you're going to add them up, look at the dollars obligated, or just use one of the ceiling values.
all right, and we did have a question about just a general question from Royal about whether the PowerPoint and recording of this webinar are going to be provided. And yes, they will be sent to each participant. Just give me some time to be able to upload the actual file of the recording, and we will get that out to you as soon as possible. So thank you for that question, Royal. And if anyone else has any other questions for Anna, while we still have a few minutes left, you can definitely unmute if you'd like to, or you can type those questions in the chat.
There was one note I made to myself earlier about distinguishing small business set-asides versus small business awards to small business set-aside recipients. Sometimes companies focus on past awards within a particular set-aside and using that to determine your total addressable market. That is the baseline, but that shouldn't be the limit, because every time there's a new acquisition or a recompete, the market research has to be performed again. So for example, if the set-aside awards were $1 million to HubZone companies, or in an agency, if we were to aggregate it, that doesn't mean that the total addressable market for HubZones is $1 million, because first of all, obviously you could compete as a HubZone on awards or on competitions that are total small business or even unrestricted. Moreover, when agencies are doing their market research, the way they determine whether or not they could set something aside depends on who is in the market then. So if they're putting out sources, thought notices, RFI, market research, talking to industry, and you are not speaking up and you are not participating, that doesn't give them the tools and the ability to set things aside for HubZone, to use my example. That's a whole other soapbox as well. But I think if you are only looking at your opportunity as opportunity that was awarded by that set aside, you may be missing on a significant portion of your addressable market and your customers' total market.
Well, Anna, we don't have any other questions, but TJ did share that he was online on his Beta.Sam profile, and he followed along doing this, and it was very helpful to do as Anna was showing us. So thank you
Cool.
So thank you for this webinar. It was very helpful to me. So thank you, TJ. That is great. Anna has definitely unlocked a few things in my head, and I'm ready to try some of the tips and tricks that we learned today. Pam from the Muskegon Area First PTAC is saying thank you so much for this great information. So Anna, we do thank you so much. If there aren't any other questions, we'll let you all get back along your day. We definitely want to thank Anna for this extremely helpful and informative training. I know I've learned a lot personally, and I'm excited to attempt to build some ad hoc reports here. And so on behalf of myself and Delana Spates-Allen of the Saginaw Future PTAC, I would like to thank each of you for attending this morning's training. You each will receive an email with a copy of the slides and a link to today's training recording so that you can go back and reference as you use your new learnings. If you have any questions about anything you learned today, please feel free to contact Anna. No, just playing. I highly encourage you to reach out to your local PTAC office for support. Please stay tuned for our upcoming April newsletter and our social media for all upcoming PTAC trainings. We have some very exciting offerings coming up. Again, thank you all for attending, and thank you, Anna, so much for coming and sharing your information. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jasmine. Thanks, everybody. I'm happy to do it. And yes, feel free to email me. I gave you my email address for a reason. And I appreciate, Jasmine, you taking a chance and letting me try this out. This is the first time that I've presented this particular information. And I think we were all able to learn a couple of things. So have a wonderful rest of the week, everyone.
Thank you again, Anna.